All right. We are live, guys. All right. First, I want to say welcome to everyone. We are so excited to have you guys all here with us. We're honored to sit down and talk with you. I'm going to give it a little while because I know it's going to take some people some time. But yeah, we're just really looking forward to this. This is a first.
This is honestly a first, and it's a very exciting first. So thank you guys for partaking in the first.
Thank you. Welcome. Happy to be here.
A pleasure.
We're climbing up here. I'm going to give it like a couple of minutes before I introduce everyone because I want to give people time. Because I know a lot of people want to attend. We have readers who sent in questions. We're going to have people giving us questions in the comment box. So I hope you guys are ready because you have a lot of fans here that are going wild over this book.
Great. Good. We're ready.
Awesome. All right. So I am Caitlin, and I'm here with Emily. We work for DSP, and we are so excited to be here with 6 of our best-selling Western authors.
They're kind of a big deal.
Yes, a very big deal. They all came together to write a short story for The Hunt of the Mountain Man, and our readers are going nuts. So we are so excited that everyone is, super excited to meet new authors and read your stories with your famous Western characters. So Emily and I are going to ask you all some questions. And for anyone who's watching, please leave us comments. We'll be checking. When we get to the end, if we can't get to them all, we'll try as many as we can. And we did have some readers mail some in, so hopefully we can get to everybody. But so with us, we have G.P. Hutchinson, Bill Joyner, Pete Turner, David Watts, Charlie Ray, and Wayne Winkle. And you guys want to hold up the product? Show it off?
Absolutely. Here we go.
Awesome. It looks awesome. All right.
We're working backwards here.
All right. DP, I'm going to start with you because you have the first short story, Kincaid Range Legend.
Mm-hmm.
So what first made you interested in the Old West?
What you're going to hear from all of us old coots who grew up in the middle of the 20th century is that back in that time, in literature, movies, and then television, Westerns were a mainstay. So we all got up on Saturday mornings, watched Westerns, went to the movies and saw Westerns and played cowboys out in the yard with our neighbors and everything. And I mean, before I ever went to school, probably most of these guys too, I'm not sure, but we all had cowboy hats and some of the chaps and shirts and whatnot, but cap guns. And so we were all cowboys before we ever started school. But what really flipped the switch for me, Caitlin, was 2 things in 1 year. My dad took our family out west to Tombstone, Arizona, on the way to a convention that he was taking part in. And so to walk where these big names like Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and the Clantons and others walked, and I mean, that just really sparked an interest for me. And the same year, just so happened that in my high school English class, the teacher had me write a research paper on the cowboy in American literature. So went even deeper in that. And ever since that time, while other interests have come and gone, interest in whether it's military history or interest in baseball and other sports and that sort of thing, always in the background, there's been an interest in the Old West. Love the Old West to this day, and just still really have been a big fan of the Old West. Lived in Texas for a little while too. You can't live in Texas and not have a little bit of that in you.
I was just going to ask where you grew up.
No, I grew up in Louisiana, but I mean, right next door to Texas. And I guess, there's plenty of that there, but Texas, you cross the line and, everything's bigger and better there.
Absolutely. So, piggybacking off of that, what do you feel makes a good Western?
Good Western, for me anyway, you start with the character. You got to have a character who's a hero type. I mean, I know recently there's been a move toward having flawed characters, but in traditional Westerns, anyway, classic style Westerns, you want to have right is right and wrong is wrong. Good guys are good guys, bad guys are bad guys. So you really want to have a guy who stands for something, you know, and probably more times than not, he's out to defend the weak and the helpless, the downtrodden, right wrongs, and that sort of stuff. And of course, you can have that in all different genres of literature, but with the West, you've got this certain aesthetic. You've got really the countryside, the land of the West is almost like a character itself. It's forbidding, it's untamed. You've got to deal with challenges that we don't have to deal with today. And talk about literature where you've got strong women. You can't have a Western. I mean, in that time, you know, if women were out in the West, they had to be strong. You know, be strong or you know, don't survive. But you know, the men were good looking, the women were strong, and you know, you can kiss your horse at the end of the story. It's you know, it's all good stuff. You know.
Yeah. And I think Kincaid accomplishes that. I love reading about Kincaid. So I love that you have that character in this book.
Yeah. Kincaid is, he's not a Westerner by birth, but he's sure thrown into it pretty fast, and he becomes one real quickly.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, speaking of heroes of the West, up next we got Bill Joyner and his mountain man, Jack Flint. And in this collection, Bill contributed his short story, Jack Flint, The Revenge of the Mountain Man. So, Bill, while we're on the topic of heroes of the West, what would you say is the great appeal of the Western, in your opinion?
I think, unlike modern times where there doesn't seem to be any black and white anymore, the original Westerns were black and white. And there were the good guys and the bad guys were definitively spelled out. And the appeal of the old Westerns, I think, is the fact that justice is served. They don't necessarily wait for court rulings. If push comes to shove, the end of a gun determine guilt or innocence. And I realize that that's not politically correct anymore. But back in the early times of the Westerns of Bob Steele and Johnny Mac Brown and of course the Duke, John Wayne, they took care of business themselves. They didn't rely on a posse or a sheriff or any type of formal hanging or dispensation of justice. They took matters into their own hands. And I think that people today wish they could do the same thing. But things are too cluttered with the court systems to apply the terms of Western justice.
I agree with you. I think there is something to say about the simplicity within Westerns. Along with that, though, where did your character Jack Flint come from? How did you develop that character?
I think Jack Flint was probably born from Jeremiah Johnson, and Jack hooked up with an old mountain man when he was very young, and eventually became a chieftain of the Shoshone Indians. And the fact that a white man could become a tribal chief of an Indian nation, I think makes Jack Flint a little different than some of the others in that genre.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Thank you, Bill. So we're going to turn it over to Pete Turner now. Pete, you contributed Bear Willis, Blood and Gold. And the first question I have for you is, how do you pick characters for your books?
Well, I think it's kind of a combination of people I've read about and people I've experienced in my life. Bear Willis kind of evolved from, I wanted to do a mountain man. I wanted to do a mountain man that was a little different. So I kind of take him as a young boy going out west at first, and what his experiences are. Basically, he runs into some problems. He ends up spending the winter in a bear cave after he chased the bear out. And in the spring, he pops out of the cave, and a couple of Indians happen to see him, and they think that he's a shift shaper, which is very common among many native tribes around the world. Really, in other words, it's a person that can change shape into a bear, into a bird, into whatever. And so he begins to have this legend made up about him, and he takes on the name Bear Willis. And as Bill has mentioned, in his Jack Flint, Bear also gets involved with spends time with the Indians, marries an Indian woman, and they have various trials and tribulations. But so the character is kind of a combination of a lot of interesting people I've seen, and just try to create a character that is going to be interesting, got a story to tell, and maybe a little different twist than the normal mountain man that you might see, you might read about.
Yeah, and I love reading about Bear right off in that first chapter, and I won't give too much away because for anybody who hasn't read it, but you kind of start out throwing him in there, like into that action, and he's definitely an interesting character. Can you tell us a little bit more about the short story that you contributed?
Well, as you said, I like to start my stories out with a bang. You're doing a Western, or in this case, an arrow. So Bear is basically riding along with a couple of buddies, and they happen to encounter a band of Cheyenne warriors, and they're attacking a wagon train. And Bear goes to the aid of the wagon train, thinking that they're just a bunch of poor pilgrims moving out west trying to make a better life for themselves. But in reality, the wagon train is really a cover for what is planned exploitation of the Indians' land for gold. And they intend to go and do some gold mining at a mountain that is sacred to the Indians. And Bear kind of gets caught in between this. He wants to prevent further bloodshed between the Indians and the settlers, but he also wants to figure out a way to defuse the situation and maybe bring the leaders of this group to.
He's frozen.
Frozen?
It's cold up in the mountains.
Yeah. He said it was raining, so bad weather. We'll wait, though. This happened to him before, and he came back with us. And then we'll hear more about Bear. While we wait for Pete, Emily, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so while we wait for Pete to come back, I will go ahead and put David in the hot seat, if that's all right with you, David.
All right.
Or on the end of a rope, or they end up shot. So it's bad guys usually end up getting justice, Western style.
Pete, you cut out on us a little bit.
Yeah.
For a couple seconds there. We're happy to have you back. So we missed the end of that a little bit.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Just all of a sudden everything went blank.
That's all right. But wait, I am going to ask you a question about Bear, because you did mention, does he fall in love? Is that asking too much? Can you tell us?
In this story, well, Bear has he appears in a lot of my stories. He originally appeared in my series on Chet Henderson, Texas Ranger, and he at this time Bear is an older man, and Charlie and I did one where he's kind of an older guy too, and he's just a well-known trapper and an old mountain man who, at the time of the writing, has 3 wives and a growing tribe of Indians, and children that are in his compound. So he has many loves throughout his life. In this short story, he and one of the women in the wagon train kind of get, I won't say to get together, but they kind of develop a friendship that could maybe turn into a romance. Again, as GP said, the women out there were incredibly strong women. I did a story with my granddaughter about the Great Western, who was a real person. Her name was Sarah Bowman. They called her the Great Western because she was nicknamed after the largest steamboat in existence at the time. Sarah was well over 6 foot, flaming red hair, kept 2 pistols and a big leather belt, and fought in the Mexican Wars. And actually, I believe was the first civilian woman and one of the very few women to be buried with military honors in a military cemetery and given the honorary rank of colonel. So there's a lot of true stories of some really amazing women out there. But so anyway, to answer your question, I'm sorry, Caitlin. Bear has many romances, and he just some of the women die, unfortunately, and some of them kind of go their way. But he's an interesting character.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you. You just muted Emily.
Emily, you here? There you are.
Sorry, there were sirens outside. So I muted for a second. Anyways, sorry to jump the gun up a bit there for you, David, but you contributed Coyote Moon to the collection of short stories here. And I hear that you have quite a background in writing. So how would you say, or why would you say, that you keep coming back to write Western?
Well, you're right. I did start out writing a lot of other kinds of material. I came first to poetry, and then I wrote a few commentary for National Public Radio, and then I turned those into short stories, which got published. And then I ended up coming back to poetry, and I actually, for the longest time, I had not thought about writing a Western. But Nick Whale, who's one of your compatriots there, I blame it on him because he read something of mine. I'm not sure what it was. And he said, "You better write a Western." And I said, "I've never written a Western." And he said, "Well, go ahead and do your first one." So I did. And it did okay. And so I kept on writing. And I think by now we've got, 9, I think, Westerns and I've got one that's just coming out this week. So the attraction to writing about Western, I found out once I got into it, was completely natural. Because I grew up in Texas. I milked a cow every day, rode a horse every day, had chickens and goats and sheep in the backyard. My dad was a farmer before he became a professor in university. And I think he thought that it was a good idea to instill in his boys the feeling of a farm and taking care of animals and the sense of responsibility that you get when you have that kind of a load of things to do. And so I also, like has been mentioned before, the movies in those days were a lot of Westerns. And my mother would drop me off at the movie theater at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and I'd watch a Western. And I did that for, several years. So I saw all those people, Hopalong Cassidy, Lash LaRue, Rango Kid, Roy Rogers, all those folks. So when it came time to write a Western, I got into it a little bit and said, heck, I know some of that stuff. I've been there.
Yeah, you said I might as well keep doing this. So
I did. And so I think having written other things first, it actually gave me a little bit about writing technique and about development of a plot and a script that's helped me when it comes to writing about westerns. But I've also found out that the genre of westerns is um, very forgiving and very accepting. You can put almost anything into it. We just heard Pete talk about a love story that goes in just fine. Mystery can go in there too. You can slip in a little philosophy, a little human understanding kind of things, behaviors, and so it becomes a study in the depth of the characters that you make, and that's always a lot of fun for me. And I think most writers keep writing because it makes them feel like they're doing something that produces something, makes them accomplish.
Definitely. You mentioned how writing westerns is kind of flexible, and it's kind of a flexible genre in terms of what you can include. Would you say that writing a western is a different experience than writing poetry or, say, a mystery novel?
Yeah, certainly it's different. Um, I mean, if you break into poetry in the middle of a western, I don't think that's going to work too well. I did try to squeeze in 2 or 3 lines here and there sometimes, uh, just for fun. But I think that westerns have a certain expectation. There's good and evil, there's black and white. There's a hero who tries to do right by people, but most characters end up being flawed. And if they don't have a flaw, then we don't trust them too much. And then the characters that I've created in other genres, like mysteries and so forth, I always wanted them to have a reason to do the things they do. So when I came to write about a mountain man, I wanted him to have a reason to leave civilization. And in this particular story, um, he ends up going after trying to find somebody who also it has a reason to leave civilization. So these accidents sort of happen when you write, and sometimes they turn out okay.
All right. Thanks, David.
Welcome.
All right, so now we're going to take it over to Charlie Ray, who wrote Caleb Johnson. I'm excited to hear more. Charlie, how are you tonight?
Doing fine, doing fine.
So, how did you get into writing westerns?
Well, like all the other authors, I mean, I grew up in the West. I was born in Texas. I grew up there. Over the years, I've lived in Arizona. I've lived in New Mexico. I've lived in Colorado and California. So I've actually lived all over the West. I worked for the government for many years, and I've been writing since my teens. I tried poetry like David. I wrote mysteries and a lot of nonfiction. And back about 10, 12 years ago, I was working in an office with a bunch of young people, sitting around sometimes talking about places I'd visited. And I discovered that most of these youngsters, even college graduates, knew absolutely nothing about the history of the United States. And I'm sort of a history wonk. I love reading history books almost more than most people love comics. So I started writing a series of very short novels, historical novels about that period from about 1865 to around 1900 to basically just to educate them. But having written mysteries before that, I call them historical novels, and I think without even knowing it, I was actually writing westerns because I put a good story has to be a good story first, and then you put the history in as incidental. And like a few of the others here, I'm sure all of us were roped into this by Nick Wales, the guru of Western writing. He got in touch with me and said, "You're writing Western, so you should start calling them that." And the rest was sort of history. The Mountain Man character actually grew out. I was writing a series of historical novels about the Buffalo Soldiers, and I ran across references to the Mountain Men. Found them fascinating, sort of the hermits of the Old West, but they were actually much more than that. They are actually responsible for a lot of the progress and opening up parts of the West. And I decided to try my hand at a mountain man character, and Caleb Johnson was born.
I love it. And exploded because the mountain man is what everybody wants. So, Nick was right. Call them Westerns.
Yeah.
So with that being said, now you said a little bit about how you started with historical, you wanted people to learn. What do you want readers to take away from your writing?
Well, first thing I want them to do is enjoy it. I mean, if they don't enjoy the story, then they're not going to absorb the history. But if you write a good story that has a good opening, action, and a satisfactory conclusion, you can slip nuggets of history in it, and people will absorb it. So, I mean, my first objective is to tell a story that's interesting, but to do it in a historically accurate way. And it's been alluded to. One of the things I try to do, I mean, the West was settled by a lot of very diverse people. And I grew up watching Western movies on a little circular black and white television back in the 40s. And while that was interesting, it wasn't always historically accurate. There were very well-told stories, but women, for example, quite often in the old Westerns of the 50s, didn't get the role, that they weren't portrayed the way they actually were. And so I make it a point in my stories to include all of the vast array of characters who were part of settling the Old West in more or less historically accurate, but at the same time entertaining situations.
I love that. And that's my favorite too, And I think it's important what you said. Like, first, you want a story that people are gonna, be entertained by, because I think a lot of times that is why people get into these stories. They want to escape from everyday life and get into a new world. And I think you do an awesome job with Caleb Johnson. So, kudos.
Thank you.
All right. So just as Charlie explained, there's like a lot of reasons that people read Westerns, and I'm sure there's a lot of different ways that you guys write Westerns. So last but certainly not least, we have Wayne Winkle. So Wayne contributed Logan Kane, Escape from Danger, to this collection of short stories. And our question for you, Wayne, is what is your typical approach to writing a book?
Most of the time, I will come up with a character in the beginning that I build a story around. Sometimes I have actually started off knowing how the story ended before I started the beginning of the book. I will come up with a character in the beginning that I build a story. I'm hearing some feedback or something, so.
Wayne, it's because we just noticed that you're not telling the truth, really, because I hear that you got to go on a good binge drunk before you get a good story going. Is that true? We just noticed that you're not telling the truth. Really, yeah, you're muted. They muted you because you weren't telling the truth. Come on, Wayne, be clean with it now.
Well, I've never been drunk, so I don't know how that works, BP.
All right, brother.
Yeah. I try to write a fairly detailed outline to at least start with. The unfortunate thing that happens sometimes with me is the characters take over in the middle and I don't know where they're going until they tell me. So the outline is just something to kind of guide me and keep me going in the same direction with everything that's going on. But mostly it's just putting my butt in the chair and starting writing. I think it may have been Louis L'Amour who said you can't expect the water to flow until you turn on the faucet. So I have to start something, even if I throw it all out and start over again, which I've done on occasion. But that's the way to get the juices flowing, I guess is one way of saying it. Everybody has their own way of doing it, but that's pretty much the way I work.
Well, it seems to be working very well for you, so I would say keep doing what you're doing.
I plan to.
Nick will be very happy to hear that. So, along with that, how do you get ideas for these books that you're writing?
For me, ideas come from everywhere. I try to keep an open mind everywhere I am, just in case I hear some nugget that I want to remember and can then develop into something. The character that I came up with for the short story, Logan Kane, was one that I had I forget when it was. I wrote down just a snippet and forgot about it for a while. But then wrote the story, the short story, and now he's going to be the central character of a series that I'm beginning. But at the beginning of the series, I had no idea where I was going with the first book. But my wife and I were out riding one afternoon going somewhere, and we were talking about something. And one of us said something that triggered in my mind what I wanted to do. And then there was the story in front of me. And I wrote it down as soon as I got back home so I wouldn't forget the biggest part of it. I don't know if the rest of these guys have the same problem with me as I do, but if I tell myself I'm going to remember that, I never do. So I want to write it all down and hope I can find where I wrote it so that I can get something going.
You don't want to forget it, but you don't want to lose where you wrote it down.
That's it exactly. Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for answering our questions that we've prepared. What's next, Caitlin?
All right. So next, I just unmuted Pete. So I do apologize, Pete, but I think the world is ending where you live because there's a lot of noise.
It could be. I'm just a few miles up from Charles Ray, so I don't know what's going on, Charlie.
Well, people think of Maryland as this urban state, and they don't realize that when you get out of the D.C. area, and if you're not in Baltimore or Annapolis, you're in the country. And Pete and I live in country. I'm living on a 5-acre farm, and whenever the wind blows, the cable goes out.
Yeah, and you're more likely to see a John Deere tractor going down Main Street than in the car. So
that's for sure.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys. We really appreciate you answering our questions. We do definitely have time for more. I know my email was blowing up, a lot of readers emailing in. We have some comments over here. A lot of people said, hey, hi to you guys. I don't know if you're able to see. Can you see their comments in the comment box?
Yeah.
I don't have Facebook in front of me.
No.
Yeah, I don't see it.
A lot of people saying hi. All right, so I'm going to put you guys on the spot.
There are a lot of comments on the Facebook thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I got it now.
Appreciate it.
So we have a question. Megan Montero asked, what are your favorite characters to write? Anyone want to take it?
Well, wait a minute. I stopped waiting just a little while ago. Megan Montero is going to get a free hardback copy of Hunt of the Mountain Man. First question up, right? Huh?
Yes.
Megan, message me, send me a PM on my GP Hutchinson page on Facebook, and I'll send you a free hardback copy. Okay?
Thank you, Megan. But who's going to answer her question?
She's the question bias again. Megan, sorry about that.
What are your favorite characters to write?
I like putting a crazy character in every book. Somebody's a little bit off the wall. And in my third Kincaid book, which I just so happen to have a copy of right here, there's a lady in the story that talks with her deceased husband to get advice on things. So, you need to have a little off the wall character there, or somebody with some really funny tick, somebody that talks about some caterwauling, numb-sucking, cranium cracking, this, you got 100 adjectives for everything they say, So some off the wall sidekick. That's fun.
Those are my favorites. Thank you, Megan. We do have a question for Pete. David Becker asked, are you and your granddaughter going to do any more books?
Hi, David. One of my biggest fans. Yeah, we're actually. I've had after we did the story about the Great Western. What it was one of my fictional characters in the Great Western kind of came together. She actually ended up in El Paso, Texas, and opened up a hotel. This is true, and my character goes to help her out because she's having some problems. So from that, I've gotten not only from David but a number of other people saying you ought to just write a book about profiling some of the amazing women of the West. Just to give you a tease here, there's another one called Rattlesnake Kate. In fact, you can look her up and see her picture. 1925, she happened to be riding her horse through Colorado, and the horse steps into a pit of rattlesnakes. The horse spooks, but she grabs her rifle and begins killing rattlesnakes. When she ran out of bullets, she grabbed a stick and continued killing them. She ended up killing 140 of them. And there's actually a picture of the rattlesnake skins all on a long pole. She made a dress out of them, ladies. And she died in 1969. Amazing woman, but there's actually a picture of her. So anyways, people have said, so David, to answer your question, I think we're going to just do profiles on some of these women that why there hasn't been more said about them or movies written about them or they haven't appeared in any Western, I don't know, but we're going to dig them out. There's a few others, and we're going to dig them out and put them all together in a book.
That's awesome. I'm definitely keep us posted on that.
I will.
So I could respond a little bit to your question about character selection.
Yeah.
I like to put a character in there that has a little quirk of some kind. I have a character in this current book called Crazy Andy, and he and the main character are stealing from each other silently. It's part of a game that they set up. Crazy Andy stole his axe one day, and so my character went back and re-stole it. And so it goes back and forth, but they never talk about it. It's just something that happens and, something that is kind of funny. I like to have that in the characters. Also, I like to have them make mistakes so that they learn things. I have a character that got caught in an avalanche because he fired a gun when he should have known better. So things like that remind us about human activities. We all make mistakes, and we're all probably a little bit crazy.
Oh, yes. We have another question from Bruce. Signed book from each of these authors. So this book is signed by all 6 of these guys, which is what's so exciting. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Bestsellers Live. If you guys want to hold up the book so they can see, is the signature page on there?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, see? We got 6 signatures. So that's why it's our special edition. It's signed. Make sure you get your copy. We're going to continue to take orders on our website, even after this event. So you can get all 6 signatures in one place.
Just think if you had the chance to get a book and it was signed by Zane Grey and Louis L'Amour, wouldn't that be something? So, soon to be a classic, I'm sure.
All right, let's go back over to some of the questions over here.
We have a question actually for GP Hutchinson.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So Ruth Rempel, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, says that they're big fans of GP. And do you ever visit the locations you write about? And if so, what's your favorite?
Ruth, thanks for tuning in for one thing, and thank you so much for the question. Do I visit places? Some of them do appear in my stories, yes. And sometimes the fact that I've been there, part of what sparks the story, just the place itself. As I mentioned, sometimes the West itself is so wide and untamed that it's part of the aesthetic part of the story. So I can say, yes, that visit to Tombstone a long time ago got things going. But San Angelo, Texas, where famous Western author Elmer Kelton is from, just breathes cowboy. And Fort Concho was there, where the Buffalo Soldiers were stationed for a while. Even St. Louis Gateway to the West has a lot there. There are a couple places on my want to go list because I know that going there will be lots of stories to come out of them, and I could name some of those. I think that was a question that maybe was going to come up later, so I don't know whether I need to answer that now or later. What do you think?
Take it away.
Yeah.
Take it away.
No, I think somebody had sent in a question about if you could visit 3 old West towns right now out west, what would they be and why? I think one would be Deadwood, because I mean these are towns that are still have very much an old West vibe to them, and they cater to people that are interested in the old West. So Deadwood would be one. Virginia City, Nevada would definitely be another one. And I think I would love to go back to Tombstone because there's so much still happening down there that they have the Eldorado days and all sorts of stuff like that. So absolutely. Thanks for your question, Ruth.
Awesome. Let's look for, we got more here. Katrina asks, can we look forward to more co-writes in the future for DSP? You guys have any secrets?
Well, I think Bill and I are going to partner up after the first of the year. Is that still in the works, Bill?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Yeah.
That's
They're
great.
a lot of fun doing the co-writes. I mean, I really enjoyed them, and one we did with Charles, and I did a couple with Casey, and then another one with T.E. Barrett out there in Wyoming, a real cowboy who really added an awful lot to the book. So they're a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
And I'm sure we'd get more info from Charles, but the wind must be blowing in Maryland, so.
Yeah, we're kind of getting all kinds of stuff going on right now.
He's back. Wait.
There he is.
There he is.
Welcome back, Charlie.
Yeah, I've been in and out.
We missed you, man.
Amazing. The internet has gone in and out more times than Carter's got liver pills.
Charlie, any co-writes coming up?
I'm working on one for Emily now, and Peter and I were talking about doing another one at some point when he finishes one he's doing. I was actually very happy with the one we just did, Land Grab, which is amazing. It's really caught on. I was pleasantly shocked to see it climb into the top 100 the first week it was up. I agree with what Pete said. The collaborations when you're writing with someone who sort of thinks in the same general direction, it can be a lot of fun. Bouncing ideas off.
We kind of write a lot like maybe Wayne does and the rest of us. I really don't know what's going to go on with the guys. I wake up in the morning and see what kind of trouble I got into overnight. That's what I write about. So it was a lot of fun bouncing off of Charlie and the things we did. So yeah, I'm up for it, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, I start writing, and then the character says, "Nope, not going there," and I just let them go where they want to go, and
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it works.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that we all eagerly anticipate those co-writes, so we'll keep an eye out for them. Right, Caitlin?
Absolutely.
All right. We have a question actually
my wife, I was writing one time and my wife came in to the office and said, "Come on, let's go eat somewhere." And I said, "Give me a few minutes because I need to see where this is going to go." And I share that with the other guys. You just don't know where the story is going until it goes there.
Yeah.
Can't stop writing if you got a good idea. We need to know what happens in these westerns that you guys are writing for us all. Tyler actually wants to know what writer inspired you guys as young men.
Well, I mean, I'll kick off because I probably have the weirdest inspiration. Two writers that inspired me. One from right here in the Rockville, Maryland area was F. Scott Fitzgerald, and the other was Ernest Hemingway. Neither of whom wrote westerns, but I like their style. They're sort of, very very economical, get right to the point style of writing, which I try to copy.
Anyone
What
else?
do you do wrong? You know,
I was inspired by Hilbert Hilton. I love that. I love his books. And to me, he is one of the most accomplished Western writers ever.
Elmore Leonard also, I mean, just the description, you can almost taste the dust on your tongue when you're reading him. You know, he just describes the scene so well. And then if you get like real punchy dialogue, um, Robert Parker, who wrote Appaloosa and that series with, is it Hitch and Virgil Cole? The Appaloosa series of movies that came out, and I mean, just punchy dialogue, real quick stuff, and can't forget it. Good stuff.
So growing up, I read a fair amount of Zane Grey, but I also was pretty inspired by Jack London. He had a short story, To Light a Fire.
Yeah.
I still remember that.
Yeah.
So dramatic, how he made that happen.
Yeah, very
I
good.
went to school on the way that he could draw out this inevitability of the story and make it exciting at every step.
Yeah.
And going back on some of the things we said before, I think one of the joys that writers get from writing is the sense of discovery. Like Bill was saying, you're not sure where the story's going to go, but you let it go there. I found that if you try to redirect the story to something you had as an idea before, the story begins to fall apart. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if the story has a consciousness and it wants to go a certain direction. And if you mess around with it, it's gonna desert you. So you write it and you keep following and you get into some territory that scares the hell out of you. But you can't back off because that's where the grist is, which makes it, I guess it makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to say Louis L'Amour was a very influential part in my learning how to write. Very, very good descriptions of the country and historically accurate, I think, at least for the most part. Certainly he had his faults, but I enjoy his books even now. I read them still, and I've learned a lot from the way he wrote.
Yeah, I agree with you, Wayne. I've read a lot of Louis L'Amour, primarily because of my dad. I guess I got to thank my dad because he would go and get a Louis L'Amour book out of the library, read it, and then so he would know which book he read because Louis L'Amour had written so many books.
Yeah.
On the back page up on the left, he put a little T with his pencil so that when he went to the library, he could open it up and say, okay, that's got my, I like to think, a brand on it. So I'll go to one that doesn't have the T on it. So Dad went through most of the Louis L'Amour books. I like to think there's still books in there at the library with his brand on them. But yeah, Louis L'Amour, and I think for me, Jack London too, very influential. Yeah. Mark Twain, Roughing It, just some good stories. There's so many great writers out there that I think have inspired all of us.
That's great. Thank you, guys. It's so good to hear.
I think I've read everything that John Johnstone ever wrote.
Dead and alive, right? They're still being marketed at Barnes and Noble, but he's gone.
Yeah.
New stories by John Johnstone.
Yeah, I think his son inherited the franchise.
Yeah.
I think it's his niece who is doing the writing. J.A. I think that's his niece.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm going to keep you on hot seat because we actually have a for you. Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Katrina has a question for you. She wants to know, how do you find different approaches to writing each book?
That's a good question. I think that if God has given you a talent, and I really can't take a lot of credit for my talent because it is God given.
Yeah.
He also gives you that ability to take different directions and mainly cover the basics of what a good Western is, but with a slightly different twist and turn. And so it just, the answer is not a very scientific one, but it basically, my characters and book ideas come from my demented mind.
There it is, Katrina. Raw answer.
That was a great answer. I think that answer would be different for all of you, but I think that was great, Bill. We actually have a question for all of you, so we'll do a little around the horn with this question. How have each of you worked through writer's block? Ruth is dying to know.
I can start. I've never had writer's block. It's never been a problem.
Hey, okay.
That's amazing. You don't want to knock on wood or anything over there?
Nope.
Okay, so what's your secret to not having writer's block?
It's like I said a while ago, start writing something, and if it's not good, you can throw it out later. But that keeps the juices flowing, and there's no such thing as writer's block in that case.
Yeah.
Love that.
There you have it.
All right, it's going to be hard for you guys to follow that up.
Well,
I would totally agree. I mean, writer's block is just refusing to write. And
Yes.
if you write something every day, like Bill said, if it's no good, you throw it out and rewrite it. But I used to, in my Army days, I moonlighted as a newspaper reporter in North Carolina, and I worked for this old editor who had an ironclad rule for every reporter on the paper. He said, you write something every single day if it's nothing but a grocery list.
Yep.
And I've done that. I strive for a minimum of 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, even if it's drivel.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, it becomes a habit. You muscle memory. You don't have, if you're writing, you don't have writer's block. You might not be necessarily writing what you particularly want to write at that time, but it's like playing tennis or being a professional golfer. You might not always feel like playing golf, but if you're a pro, you better be out there on the course swinging a club. If you're a writer, you write. That's it.
I agree with that, Charlie. I think that Oakley Hall had that same rule. You write something every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes sure that you sit down and get something done.
Yeah.
I think writer's block is when you let the editor creep in and say, don't sit down to write unless you've got something really good.
Yeah.
Truth of the matter is you have to write sometimes just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And you write through a lot of stuff before you get to the real good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to write what you believe to be the beginning of your story and throw it away. And then in the third chapter, you come up with what the story really is.
Yeah.
And there was a poet by the name of Stafford, and they asked him why he never got writer's block because he wrote a poem every day. He said, I just lower my standards. And that's so true, because if you fight with yourself about how good it's got to be when you put it on the page, you'll never put anything down.
Yep.
And then when you finally get something going, then the good stuff can come. So
Yep.
I
Which
think
brings up another question. What is the biggest chunk of writing you've ever thrown away, David? I personally have thrown away 40,000 words. Get myself into a spot in a story. I'm thinking, you can't fix this one. 40,000 words down the tube. That's a lot.
Oh, that's amazing. I've
I
done that twice.
I had the same situation, GP. I once wrote a 50,000 word novelette, I guess that's a novel at 50,000 words. And then my computer crashed before I could back it up. So I had to go back to page one and start over from the beginning. The rewrite was better than the first version too.
That's
Getting back to the writer's block thing, I think, and I'm speaking for myself, but I know the other guys here and most writers, if you love what you're doing and you're passionate about it, it's almost like not writing every day would be terrible. I have to write every day because it's almost like breathing, if you will. The other thing that helps is I always have 2 or 3 things going on at the same time. You know, like I might be doing a co-write with somebody, but at the same time, I'm also working on an idea or a story for another book. So if I get stuck with one book, then I can jump to the other. So I'm always writing or coming up with things. And like I said, I think Wayne said they were riding in the car, and all of a sudden an idea came to them. They pop in and out of my head all the time, and I try to get as much of them done. But I think you really have a passion for what you're doing. You love what you're doing, and you can't seem to. It's like the guy that plays the guitar, or a poet that writes, or the person that has to go out every day and run because they just love to run. That's how writing is for me, anyways. Having a passion, having a couple, 2 or 3 ideas going in.
I'm not a volume. I'm not a volume writer like my fellow authors here. Probably not as tough as they are, but sometimes I only write like 500 words, and then I lose patience with it. And once I lose patience with it, it's time to take a break and come back later. But lack of patience keeps me from writing large volumes. And so, anyways, I guess I just muddle along doing my thing, and honestly, I marvel at some of you guys and how much you do write. That just doesn't fit me.
All right. Everyone writes different. But speaking of writing, I'm putting you all on the spot here, so get ready. How do you enjoy writing for DSP?
Jeez.
Keeps me busy because Nick comes along and says, "Okay, I need another one."
Yeah.
He's
So
good.
you have to sit down and start over again. And sometimes you sit down without very much of an idea.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is once you sit down and start writing, then the ideas come. And for me, I don't plan out the novels before I do it. I just get a situation, and I get a character that I think is interesting, and I create a conflict. And I put those 3 things together, and out of that comes, chapter 2, and then chapter 3, and then something else happens. The imagination is funny that way, I think. It doesn't necessarily go by design, it goes by leap. And so when these things happen, it creates action. And in Westerns, as in a lot of writing, I think action is really an important element. It can't all be action, but that really puts the spice into it.
I think, having been with another publisher, which was a very bad experience, being with DSP has been just great for me. And talking to other writers that write in different genres that I know, they're amazed at this kind of stuff that we do. This being an example, this virtual book signing event, the first of its kind, I guess, that multiple authors together talking about their books and putting together a limited edition. But Nick and Caitlin and Emily and all the rest of the people at DSP are very supportive. If you don't like a cover, and send it back, and you get a new one in like a half an hour. Here, what do you think of this one, Pete? So I mean, it's not so much. I think a lot of people think of publishers and editors as the ones that are hammering it on the head, saying it must be done this way, it must be done this way, and that's not the case here. They guide you, they give you ideas, they tell you where you should be going, but then they kind of let you run with it, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Tremendous support.
Yeah, for me, writing for DSP is a pleasure.
Yeah, I mean I second that. it's nice to be associated with people who think of you as something other than just a financial commodity, and that's the feeling. Although I have to say, Emily, sometimes I feel like you're a stagecoach driver and I'm a tired out.
Sorry, I'll have to work on it. I'm still learning the ropes as
No,
you
I'm
know.
joking. I'm joking. You drive me to places that I enjoy when I get there.
And I have to say that
Anytime.
the DSP people seem to be very nice people. You know, they seem to be to like your work and encourage you. It's I'll just echo what has already been said. It's a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you, guys. Honestly, we're honored to have worked with all of you on this project. It's not only been fun, we've learned a lot. It was amazing getting to know you guys. I think it's an amazing book. So again, anybody who wants to purchase it, it's signed by everyone here today. Yes, hold it up one more time. Awesome. I love it. So yeah, you can get it on Amazon on our Bestsellers Live website. We posted it in the comments. We didn't get to all of our questions, but maybe I'll email you guys because we are going to wrap it up for today. But I just can't thank you enough for, getting together with us, talking with us, answering everyone's questions. And thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening. I know everybody here thanks you for your support, and we can't wait for more from you guys.
Okay,
look forward to doing that.
We'll try and deliver. Thank you. Yes, great job,
Awesome.
ladies.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Everybody for coming in and watching us and listening to us. Love it. Great.
All right, guys. So we'll have to do this again because we have more to say. So
Absolutely.
That's fine.
Thank you, all of you that tuned in. Really, really
Yes.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you for your readership.
And
Yeah,
awesome questions.
Yep.
It's been great.
Amen.
All right, I'm gonna get back to reading Hunt of the Mountain Man because I have it on my Kindle. So
Me too.
Good deal.
all right, everyone have a great night. Thank you all again, and we hope to do it again soon.
Okay.
Right.
Take care.
Good
Be
night,
safe.
everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Night.